3.
Today we will continue our story by talking about my undergraduate and graduate education, as well as the introduction of Ava into my life. As I mentioned in my last segment, there was never any question of not going to continue my studies. The only question was, where would I go to college and how could I pay for it? Because of the financial circumstances of my family and my own, there was only one logical choice, and that was nearby Youngstown University, which from Sharon, where we at that time lived, was about a half an hour's drive. The university was not famous. It was supported by mainly the steel industry in the Mahoning Valley. It had about 6,000 or 6,500 students when I enrolled as a freshman. Many of these students were part-timers. It was a commuter school with rather meager facilities. One thing that it had that recommended it very much was that it was very inexpensive. And so by continuing to work at my job at Loblaws as a produce clerk, I could earn enough money to pay for my own tuition and pay for the transportation back and forth, which was usually with friends who were going to the university from the Sharon area, and I would then contribute to their gas money. Let me also say that I had rather limited knowledge as to how an American university is set up. I knew what I wanted to be, but I didn't know about credit hours, about how one proceeds to achieve an education. I had an experience which answered these questions beautifully. When I was scheduled for registration for my first semester at Youngstown, I had stood in line for about 4.5 hours before I was able to get to an advisor. And when I finally did get there, the advisor, a very distinguished looking gentleman, turned to me and said, "Well, young man, what do you want to accomplish?" And I said, "Sir, I would like to become a history professor." And he said, "Well, do you know how to go about that?" I said, "No, I would really appreciate if someday I could come and see you and you could explain to me how to proceed." He said, "Forget about someday, we will do this right now." And he then proceeded to explain to me the difference between a Bachelor of Arts degree in history, a Bachelor of Science in Education with a major in history. He explained exactly what constitutes graduate school, how after receiving a master's degree you then proceed toward a PhD, how long each of these processes take. He probably had me sit there for over a half hour and explained everything in the most clear and understandable fashion. It turned out that this man eventually, he was at that time a professor of English. He eventually became Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And when I joined the faculty at Youngstown University a few years ago, he was my dean. So this was my first encounter with him, and he helped me immensely in mapping out the procedures I had to follow in order to fulfill my dream.
What was his name?
His name was Carl Dykema. And Dr. Dykema was actually a scholar of considerable renown. He had been a student at Columbia University, had edited a book that was widely used in freshman classes throughout the United States. It was my luck that at the time that I was a student at Youngstown, the history department and the modern language department and the English department were among the best departments at the university. In fact, the vast majority of the history department faculty were Chicago PhDs. And by selecting my other classes carefully, was able to receive an excellent education. It is also true that the level of education at Youngstown, particularly at that time, varied greatly from really outstanding faculty members to people who were absolutely zero in their ability and their scholarly background. I decided to major in history, obviously, and also in French. And because I had almost a native level of knowledge of French, I was able to bypass a number of courses, for which, by the way, I paid the credit hours, and I was able to make very quick headway to the upper division classes, and also declared a minor in German, did the same there, took my exams in intermediate German, just paid for it, then just took courses in German literature. I developed a great love for anthropology and sociology, took a number of courses in that. So finally, when I did graduate, I had a double major in history and French, and had a double minor in German and sociology. As far as campus life was concerned, there was basically nothing for me, simply because I would arrive to take the courses, usually arranged my schedule in such a way that I was on campus on Tuesday and Thursday, usually from early in the morning till late at night, or Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, early in the morning to late at night. And thus I was able to work at the Loblaw store on those days when I was not on campus. In 1956, during the course of my first semester at Youngstown University, the Hungarian revolt against the communist rule took place, which obviously all of us followed with a great deal of interest. And then subsequently, a number of those who had fled Hungary, about 200,000 fled Hungary in 1956, a large number of them came to the United States, and quite a few of these families and young men who were freedom fighters came to Youngstown, and even to the Sharon Farrell area, where they were then sponsored by the same church that we were sponsored. This brought a number of very interesting people to the area, many of them actually more the generation of my father and mother, but there were some younger ones, and among them was a family that had a very lovely teenage daughter by the name of Ava, and I fell in love with the first Ava. but that didn't last terribly long because her family then eventually picked up and moved to California, and I lost track of her. But then I found another lovely girl, the sister of one of my Farrell High School classmates. She was a Greek girl by the name of Marcy, and we had a brief fling, and always remember her fondly. She now is a realtor in Manhattan and makes deals in the millions of dollars, and has done obviously well for a little girl from Farrell, Pennsylvania. As far as the university is concerned, it was a delight to be able to take courses in which I was really interested. I no longer had to take algebra and chemistry. Remember my problem with chemistry. So this was a wonderful experience. So my mind began to grow and open. And actually the time that I spent at Youngstown, not only in the classroom, but in other ways, also helped to expand my mind. Because I came in the morning and stayed on campus till night, and my classes were set up in such a way that there were a number of free hours in between, usually in the early afternoon, I very often spent those hours hanging out in the library, which was one of the places that was a neat place to hang out. Plus, the campus was very close to downtown Youngstown, and they still had large major department stores, like a place called Strauss Hirschberg, which later then had to close because of the shift in population. And Strauss's, for example, had a huge book department. And right there you could see all of the modern library editions of the great classics of the Western world. They had a magnificent music department with an incredible selection of classical records. So by just going down there, by looking at the books, by reading into them, sometimes buying them, or going to dozens and dozens of records, I was able to acquaint myself not only with the composers, but who were the conductors of the great orchestras of the world. And you could actually even play the records in a little booth attached to the music department. So all these things were a wonderful way to expand my mind. Now, in the year 1957, a number of interesting things occurred. That year, we were able to buy our first house. My mother and father were able to save enough money for a down payment. We found a rather old but large house, and with considerable elbow grease, in which the whole family took turns in stripping wallpaper and painting and patching and whatever. We were able to bring this house up to better standards. We were also able to move in such a way that each of us children had our separate bedroom, and for the very first time I did not have to share a bedroom with my younger brother, which then also meant that my relationship with him had increased markedly, because there was no more fighting about who made a bigger mess and who was responsible for cleaning up. By this time, my library was, my book collection was growing very nicely, and so my father and I set ourselves to building a wonderful bookcase, portions of which then survived actually all the way to the time that we moved to Florida in 2006. Well-built bookcases. And again, I had my desk and a place to work, and all this worked out wonderfully. 1957 is also the year when our family decided to go to Cleveland to a Hungarian scout event, a ball held at one of the lovely hotels in Cleveland, the Tudor Arms. And there I met a young girl who was a friend of my sister's, and her name was Eva Oslaini. And she was charming, but let me also stress that this was not love at first sight. In fact, there was very little interaction between the two of us. Possibly my comment that, yes, I remembered her from Germany, and I remembered her sitting on the potty, might have poisoned that relationship. From the start, I do remember dancing with her. Also remember that another guy then very quickly cut in. Subsequently, years later, she told me that the man who cut in then told her, "Oh, I came to cut in because I wanted to save you from that ugly guy." We had a good laugh about that. Interestingly though, on the way home, and I can still tell the spot in Cleveland as we were driving home around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to Sharon, Pennsylvania after the ball, I made the comment that that Eva is such a charming young woman, she will make somebody an excellent wife. At that point, obviously, I had no idea that I would be the lucky guy whose wife she would become. The fact that there was really absolutely no chemistry between us is also attested by the fact that about a year and a half later, there was a Hungarian Scout conference in Youngstown, where I met Eva again as she was hanging out with my sister, and we then went to the movies, and Eva managed in such a way that my sister sat between her and myself, so she really didn't want to have much to do about me in any way. Returning to my studies at Youngstown University, because of the fact that I took extra classes, because of the fact that I took a very heavy load, I was able to be ready for graduation in 3 years and finish the 4-year curriculum in 3. So in the spring of 1959, I was getting ready for graduation in June, and now had to face a new problem, namely where to go to graduate school. With the encouragement of the professors in the history department and modern language department, I then made application for admission and scholarship to a large number of very good schools, among them University of Chicago, University of Wisconsin, University of Michigan, Columbia, University of Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, and even on the West Coast to UCLA and the University of Washington in Seattle. I was admitted to all of them. So my grades were good enough for admission. The problem, however, was financial assistance, because obviously I didn't have enough money, just barely enough to have paid for my tuition at Youngstown. And financial assistance was offered by Pitt, the best deal was from Notre Dame, and the University of Chicago said that I could come and they would arrange for me to become a dormitory supervisor. I wasn't too keen on the prospect of being a dormitory supervisor, so the best offer being from Notre Dame, I accepted that. There will always be a question in my mind to what degree my acceptance and the offer from Notre Dame was influenced by a letter that my father wrote to two friends that he knew at Notre Dame on the faculty, a professor of political science by the name of István Kertész, who was an ex-diplomat and a very distinguished author, and the other one was Professor Gabriel, who was a priest, a canon, that is like a Monsignor, and my dad had corresponded previously with both of them, and when it was time for me to go to graduate school, he wrote a little letter to them saying, if you can be of any help, please be of assistance. And as I said, I never know to what degree their intercession with the dean of the graduate school and the graduate selection committee resulted in the offer of a scholarship. In June of '59, I graduated cum laude from Youngstown University. At commencement, I was awarded the Youngstown Vindicator Outstanding Award in Humanities. I received it on the stage. Just prior, I was also invited to be a member of a very select honorary society called the Clarence School Society, the requirements of which were exactly the same as Phi Beta Kappa. In fact, the committee that always ran the Gould Society were always Phi Beta Kappa members. Obviously, my parents were very proud to be at that graduation, and was a much better graduation than 3 years prior, when I was a little disappointed that I was not among the students sitting on a stage because I missed the honors student graduation by a few hundredths of a point. During the summer, I finished working at Loblaws, received a very nice letter thanking me for my faithful services. Well, 5 years I worked at Loblaws, and as I pointed out, they were instrumental in helping me. My fellow employees gave a very nice farewell party for me, and even bought a crock pot for me to be able to make stuff, by the way, unused for the next few years. And they also bought me my first electric shaver, armed with which I went off to graduate school. So on to the University of Notre Dame in September of 1959. There were 21 of us in the Master of Art in History class, and most of these people came from rather prominent, fancy Eastern big-name schools. They had gotten their degrees there, and I must honestly say I was to some degree intimidated and also anxious, because I did not really know how well I would be able to compete against these people in a high-pressure environment like graduate school at Notre Dame. Let me point out that the graduate faculty at the university was really world class, and the preparation for scholarly life that we received was really first class. My main area of interest at this time was the area of the Reformation, 16th, 17th century, and early modern European history up to and including the French Revolution. I made progress and soon realized that I didn't really have to be too concerned. I was able to keep up with my studies, and there was no reason to feel in any way as a second-class citizen because I was a graduate of a no-name institution. There's also a wonderful aspect to all of this. For the first time in my life, I had leisure. It was so wonderful that after attending class, I didn't have to run off and weigh vegetables and bag onions and lettuce and whatever, but I could go back to my little room that I rented from a dear old lady called Mrs. Morozsan, and I could work on my class assignments. I could read, but I could also read things that were not of a historical nature. I could read plays by George Bernard Shaw, and I could read novels by Aldous Huxley, and I could read books on anthropology and anything and everything that interested me. My social life was rather minimal on campus, simply because in 1959 and for some years to come, the only women on campus were nuns. And so that was not really that much fun. I did, however, make the acquaintance and eventually the friendship of a very sweet Benedictine nun, almost 6 foot tall, who at one point even rode on the bar of my bicycle around campus, which must have been a hell of a sight, because with her full ecclesiastical garb, it was an unusual sight to see somebody on the bar of a bicycle with a guy driving her around. Anyway, as far as there was a large Hungarian community in South Bend, and they were very nice in welcoming me. I made good friends with 2 Hungarian guys who were students at Notre Dame, and we used to have lunch together and hang around, go to various restaurants and parties and whatever. The Hungarian girls in South Bend at the time were considerably younger and obviously, not dating material, so that was not much fun.
What were the names of your friends and the sister?
My one friend who became later a biologist and subsequently a doctor was Piacek Béla, and the other one who became a mechanical engineer was Lontai László. The turning point of my academic career, in fact, in many ways, a major point in my life, was the acquaintance, a closer acquaintance with one of the professors to whom my dad had written, Professor Gabriel. Professor Gabriel was the director of an autonomous part of the graduate school called the Medieval Institute. He was really a world-renowned scholar even by that time. And he was one of the big men on campus. My meeting with him and a closer acquaintance goes something like this. One day I was standing before the window of the Notre Dame bookstore, and I was looking at the new publications displayed in the shop window, and all of a sudden I felt sort of a jab in my ribs, and it was Gabriel who had just stuck me with his Avenue,
Umbrella.
with his umbrella. And he said, I am delighted to see that you're interested in books and are not hanging around the stadium watching the football game. He said, you seem to be a serious kind of a guy. Why don't you make an appointment with my secretary and come and see me sometime in the near future, because I would like to discuss certain matters with you. So I made the appointment with the secretary. He was very kind and welcomed me in his office, and he sat me down. He said, look, I have been buying multitude of excellent Hungarian books, both old and new. Some primary sources published in the 17th, 18th century. And they are available here in the Medieval Institute Library. I will show you around, and I will point out to you what is available. And it would be really great if somehow you could choose a topic, use these books for your research, and write your master's thesis under my direction. He says, don't worry about, I know you're in the history department. I would arrange with the history department that I would be your thesis director, and they would be perfectly fine with that. So sure enough, he showed me around, and I was very impressed with really hundreds, if not thousands, of books that he had purchased, mainly from the communist Hungarian government at cut-rate prices. And so after being introduced to the librarian, and the librarian was told by Gabriel that Mr. Domonkos here will come, and he has run of the place anytime he wants to come here, and you treat him nicely. So I made the round of the library, found that there was a considerable amount of material on a late 15th century king by the name of Matthias Corvinus, and again made an appointment to see Gabriel, told him that I would like to write a thesis on the influence of foreign scholars on the court of this Matthias Corvinus. Gabriel thought that that was a capital idea, and he said, now, next time you come armed with 2x5 cards, 6x5 cards, notebooks, and I will show you research methods that you will find useful, not only for this project, for the rest of your scholarly life. And sure enough, I came to see him, and by the way, from this point, every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock we met, if he was in town, and he showed me how to take bibliography cards, what goes, in what way to distinguish between primary sources, that is, those sources that go back to the period that we are talking about, or those things that are secondary sources. Those are materials written by somebody later on about those events. He made that distinction, showed me how to differentiate and so forth. And every Friday afternoon, I had to present a number of cards. We laid them out on a huge table, and he would say, well, I'm glad you have seen this book. There is another book, I took notes, that you should be looking at. And he was guiding me beautifully, and was very pleased with the number of cards on the table each time. And here I must add a little story. I remember there were a few instances where not having enough cards, I tried to recycle some of the old ones and put them on a table. And Gabriel was looking at it. He says, "Now, my dear boy, I'm not accusing you of cheating or anything, but just to make sure that in the future all the cards are new, and I had not seen them previously. Could you wait a moment here?" And he disappeared into his office, came back with a rubber stamp, and put his name on all of the cards on the table, and winked at me, and he said, "Now I would like to see cards again next week and the week thereafter that do not have my stamped name on them." He never said that, you know, you're cheating, because he was too much of a gentleman. Anyway, that's how things began, and apparently Gabriel was pleased with the progress that I had made. And when the following semester, spring of the year 1960 rolled around, I had to face once more a question. Do I stay at Notre Dame and continue my studies toward the PhD, or do I go somewhere else now with an MA from Notre Dame in hand and continue my graduate work somewhere else? Again, I made application to a number of places. Again, I received a response, again, both from Chicago and a very fine offer from Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. Apparently, Gabriel, impressed by the progress that I had made, went to bat for me at Notre Dame to keep me there, and talked to the dean of the graduate studies. By the way, whenever he went to talk to somebody, it wasn't like going to his office and sitting down. It's always taking them to a nice restaurant, and after having plied them with good food and a lot of wine, he would then talk business. So he was able to convince the dean to offer me what was known as the Grace Fellowship at the Medieval Institute. This fellowship was established by the Peter Grace Fund. Peter Grace was the president of the Grace Shipping Lines, a major conglomerate that was headquartered in New York and I think in Boston. And Peter Grace was also on the board of trustees of the university, and gave this scholarship yearly to the Medieval Institute. And so I then became a, quote, Grace Fellow, which provided for tuition fees and a monthly stipend, so that my condition of existence was in a way ensured, although obviously this was not very lucrative, but it kept me, kept body and soul together, and it worked fine. One stipulation that Gabriel had in offering me the Grace Fellowship was that I must very quickly learn medieval Latin, because to study in the medieval field, Latin is an absolute must, because during the Middle Ages everything was written in Latin. So, although I've had high school Latin, it was not enough for me to be able to function well, so he gave me all kind of extra books and looked after me to study medieval Latin. I accepted the Grace Fellowship after discussing all the options with my dad, with whom I usually discussed all important things. He had always shown a great deal of interest in my in my work, and wasn't only a father-son relationship, but a very friendly, intimate kind of relationship. And so Gabriel then outlined basically what he proposed for me if I became a student at the Institute. Namely, for the next 2 years, I would take courses at the Institute and in the history department that were tied to medieval studies, because there were history courses in the history department as well. And even art history in the art department would be part of this setup. So for 2 years, I would take all the courses necessary. I would have to write another master's thesis. I would have to defend all that in an oral examination. And then in the third year of my fellowship, I would then spend my time gathering material for my doctoral dissertation. So it was basically a 3-year plan. And it worked out. In fact, I must say Gabriel was right on target. I pretty well followed this path that he had outlined for me, with one exception, about which we'll talk later, but let me just mention it. At the conclusion of the 3 years, he was able to secure for me a Fulbright fellowship to the University of Vienna in Austria, so that I could do additional research for my dissertation. So, meanwhile, I completed my studies for the MA. In the history department, in late July, I handed in my thesis that I had written under Gabriel's direction. The history department faculty had an oral exam in which I had to answer questions not only on the thesis but in the coursework that I had done in general. I passed all those with great deal of without any major problems. And in early August, I received my Master of Arts in History from the university. And remember, I mentioned that 21 of us began that year in September. By August the 8th, when I received the MA, 2 of us received the MA out of the 21. So obviously, I had not been a slouch. How are we doing with time?
43 minutes.
So let's now turn to my years at the Medieval Institute and talk about that. So my first year as a grad student in the Medieval Institute started in September of 1960. This was a new phase of my academic life, as well as we shall talk about, was also a new phase in my personal life. As far as the academic life is concerned, let me just say that the Medieval Institute was an absolutely marvelous place to work. First of all, talk about intense personal attention. There were 8 professors associated with the Medieval Institute. They also taught in other departments, in music, art, literature, and so forth. But they were on the faculty of the Medieval Institute. And when I began my studies at the Institute in 1960, I was 50% of the student body. It was a Franciscan friar called Father Murphy and I. Later, the second year, a whole bunch of new kids showed up, and eventually there were 6 of us, so tremendous expansion of the student body. But the first year, I was 50% of the student body, which then had great advantage of getting personal attention. But it also meant that if you decided to either sleep in or take a quick trip to Chicago for the weekend, even the dullest professor would notice that 50% of the class was missing. So it really had to be on the ball and to devote myself to my studies very seriously. The layout of the institute was also conducive to excellent scholarly progress. The institute was housed in a special section of the university library. There was a separate institute library and materials of the rarest sort were around everywhere. You could just go up to the shelf and pull books that in any other place on the face of this earth you would have to hunt down and get somebody to bring to you because of the rarity of the book or so forth. Our seminar rooms, again, were in an environment where everything was right at your fingertips, and if we did not have a particular book, we usually had it on microfilm. So, for example, the Medieval Institute had a very special collection on the history of medieval universities, which was one of the subjects Gabriel was primarily interested in, was world-renowned in that area. Books on the beginning of almost every university in the world were right there. You could go up to the shelf and pull off the books and open them and read them. So it was a marvelous place to work. Besides the director was an assistant director, a very kind and sweet man who was also the professor of medieval Latin, who showed a great deal of patience with me because that was the one area where I had immense difficulty throughout my career there. There was a special librarian who was Dr. Lazenby, who was there to help anybody with any kind of problem that they had in finding any research tools. Gabriel was a hard taskmaster. As part of my fellowship, I had to work 20 hours a week as his research assistant, and he put me to work on very difficult tasks, but at the same time this meant that I became acquainted with not only the material present at the Medieval Institute, but because, for example, I had to prepare mailing lists for distribution of some of his publications. I got to know the name and the place of employment of almost every major medievalist in the world. So the education was a very extensive and very wonderful way of again, expanding the mind. As I mentioned, the other new phase of my life with the start in September of 1960 is in my personal life. Eva enters into the picture, and she stays part of my life for the next 50 years. A bit of background here. Remember I mentioned to you that the Oslani family and my family knew each other already in Germany. We were together in that prisoner of war camp near Düsseldorf back in 1946. At that point, my parents and Oslani parents did not socialize much. The Oslanis were actually good friends with my aunt and uncle, my mother's elder sister, who then unfortunately decided to go back to Hungary in order to preserve some of their landed wealth, but that was confiscated and they had very, very hard times subsequently. The Oslanis and the Radvanis were there when the prisoner of war camp was dissolved, and we all ended up in that bowling alley about which I talked in a previous presentation. The Oslani children were with us, Domonkos children, at the Düsseldorf Children's Hospital when we all had measles. They came to the United States in 1951 on the General Sturgis, just as we came. They came in April, we came in August, so again, sort of a strange juxtaposition. And there was a reconnection then in the US, and this reconnection was really through my sister. My sister Judy, or Yutka, became friends with Eva at a scout camp in Canada, Hungarian scout camp. And I already mentioned that we met with Eva at the ball in Cleveland in 1957. And as I mentioned, there was absolutely no chemistry between us. The first real meeting where it was not just sort of a passing thing, was at Easter in 1960. Eva invited my sister, and probably as sort of a aside, invited me to come along to Cleveland. They had a big house party, and we were their house guests as well. And I got to talk to Eva a little more. And later, in one of her letters, years past this event, she mentioned that that's the first time she began having some feelings toward her. And I must say I was very impressed with Eva, and even contemplated writing to her after this house party, but then dropped the matter and did not pursue it. Maybe I should have. There was a subsequent invitation to the Oslani house. This was shortly after I had received my master's degree in August of 1960, and I was home for almost a month. I went to Cleveland on some other, I don't know what I was doing there, but made a trip and called their house, talked to her father, and he invited me over. I came over. Eva wasn't even home, spent some time with her dad, and then Eva came home and we had coffee or something. Again, sort of just reacquainted. Then she invited Judy, my sister, and me again, and we all, along with Tony, were invited to a house party at some other friends, which turned out to be a rather boring party. And so by common decision, we decided to cut out of there earlier and went riding around in the park. And Eva and I were in the back seat, and we began kissing and found all of a sudden that there was a considerable amount of chemistry involved in that one. In fact, it was very good chemistry. Again, the next event was the Halmush family in Youngstown, Piri, Priscilla Halmush. By this time, a young woman, about 17 or 18, had a house party to which she invited a number of kids from Cleveland, invited us three Domonkos kids from Sharon, and among the people invited was Eva. And I remember this as if it was today. When we arrived, Eva was upstairs getting changed. She had traveled from Cleveland and to get ready for the party. She was getting changed, and she came down the steps and into the living room when I was sitting across from the steps as she was coming in. On the record player, the song Some Enchanted Evening was playing. and Eva showed up in this polka dotted dress, and she just looked stunning. I lost my heart right there and then. Anyway, we then danced and whatever, and I guess we sat there looking lovingly at each other, because one of the other people at the party then came up and interrupted our gazing by saying, "Oh, you two, but the only thing that's missing is a violin player here." Anyway, Eva was invited to the Halmushes, but she stayed at our house in Sharon, and so we then drove back to Sharon, and we kissed again, and the chemistry was even stronger, and we spent a very pleasant day in Sharon before she had to go back to Cleveland. In fact, the next day she had to go to the dormitory because as a sophomore in the nursing program at St. John College in Cleveland, all of the nursing students had to live in this dormitory attached to a hospital called St. Vincent's Charity Hospital. Before departing for Cleveland, we made a pledge to each other that we will write and keep in touch. And so she gave me her address at the St. Vincent Charity Hospital, and I promised to write to her. Later on, many years later, she admitted that to some degree her acquisition to writing was also motivated by the fact that at this charity hospital, if she received mail from a graduate student from Notre Dame, this would, in a way, elevate her reputation among her nurse friends. And so she said, I'm a little ashamed of this, but there was a secondary purpose to you writing to me. So we began writing nice letters to each other. The next major and very pleasant event was I was able to get her to come and visit in South Bend for a football game. Now, please note, in those days, girl just didn't go and visit somebody at their dormitory or their place in another town. This was a different age. You needed some chaperone, so forth. So armed with chaperones, my brother Steve, Istvan, and my sister, Eva came along. By the way, I also wrote a letter to her mom and dad asking for permission for her to come and see me. And they were very impressed by the fact that I asked them as well as Eva to come. And so they showed up. We had an absolutely wonderful time. We went to the ball game. I did honestly forget to bring gloves, and so during the very, very cold Navy game, I had to hold hands with her to keep my poor hands from freezing off. She always maintained that it must have been done purposefully just so that I could do this. Subsequently, we went to the dance. I very briefly introduced her to Dr. Gabriel, who was very impressed that she was a very nice and Hungarian young lady. And the very first picture of her and I together was taken by my dear brother, and that is one of my treasured remembrances. Note that because both of us were very poor, we were forced in essence to write to each other because meeting each other was a very rare occasion. Long distance telephone in those days was prohibitively expensive, especially across state line. And so it is the letters that kept this romance going. When I was home for Christmas, we saw each other. New Year's Eve, the Oslani family came and stayed at our house. We danced in the kitchen, had a lovely time, and the romance continued. We were seriously talking about marriage, but let me also say that at that point things looked rather bleak. We had both, let's say in January of 1961, 2.5 years to go before we could even think of marriage, because there was never any doubt that both of us would have to finish our education before we started married life. Because she had to work and I was also in grad school. Finances were tight. Our meetings were very, very infrequent. 3 or 4 times a year is all that we could get together. So, although there was an immense amount of longing expressed in these letters, the desire to get married was in many ways sabotaged by the realities of life. Let me conclude here in a minute or so. Things went very well in our relationship with Eva, and the letters that we exchanged were really and truly love letters. Then around June of the year 1961, I detected a change of tone. The letters became more impersonal, more standoffish, cool. There were indications that she was uncertain and confused about the long-range plans of ours. I came to see her in July. We had a long talk again. It was unsatisfactory. I was wondering if she was really as committed as she sounded previously. Then in the end of August, Eva was taken to the hospital. She had had a series of problems with her tonsils, and the college nurse had indicated that she would not be allowed back for her junior year unless she had her tonsils removed, because she had missed too many classes because of tonsillitis and whatever. So she was scheduled for surgery. I, at that point, had come home from Notre Dame, was in Sharon. She went to the hospital, went through the surgery, which she explained as being one of the most horrible things in her adult life. She would much rather give childbirth than have her tonsils removed once more. I called her subsequently saying that I would like to come up. It was also the time of her birthday. And she said, well, you can come up and see me, but I have one very important prerequisite. I do not want you to bring anything. If you come with a gift or flowers or whatever, I will not even let you through the door. So I said to her, okay, could I bring just one flower, one stem of flower? And she said, okay, if you promise that you will bring nothing more than one stem of flower, then we can meet. And so I went up to see her, and we talked at length. I questioned her whether she feels that she could spend a lifetime with me, and she said that she is unsure about that. And I said, well, based upon our previous conversation and this, as far as I'm concerned, this is the end of the road, because I want somebody who can stand by me, and this uncertainty just will not fly. And so I said, well, then in that case, we will end this, and I wish you good luck, and I am finishing this relationship. I think it was, by this time, something that both of us felt that we wanted out. She for her reasons, I for mine. She did say, upon receiving this one red rose, she said, well, if someday I might change my mind about this relationship, and if you still want me at that time, I will send back this rose to you as a sign that I would like to be taken back. And I said, well, a fat chance for that. And I got up and walked out. She followed me to my car, and at that point she was handing me a ring, a golden ring. It was not an engagement ring, it was just sort of a symbolic ring that I had given her during the course of our courtship. She said, well, I'm giving this back to you, and I said, I don't want it, and I threw it into the devil strip in front of her house. I jumped in the car, put on the engine, and according to her, I peeled out of there on two wheels as I made the turn down Lake Avenue and disappeared. She and her mother were out there with a flashlight for the next half hour looking for the little gold ring. And I disappeared, and that was the end of our relationship. And I think this should be a good time to end this part of our story. In our last episode, we were talking about the rather dramatic breakup between Eva and myself, and I felt at that point that the relationship between us is over once and for all. I returned to Notre Dame to continue my studies at the Medieval Institute. There were a few letters that Eva and I exchanged. In one of them, she then wrote, admitted that the reason for the breakup is all hers, and that I had been a perfect gentleman, she writes, and she's sorry, but it was her and nobody else who was responsible for the breakup of this relationship. Strangely enough, although we broke up, our parents apparently still remained friends. In fact, the Oslani parents went to visit my parents in Sharon, spent a wonderful afternoon that fall talking to each other, never mentioned us. Yet when they were ready to leave, Eva's mother turned to my mom and said, you know, our kids might be fighting, but we still love each other and we will always feel the same way about you. And they then left. I came home for Thanksgiving vacation, did not call Eva, although in a subsequent letter she indicated she was expecting me to. In my response to that, I indicated that there was really not much to talk about. And at Christmas time, we did see each other briefly. My sister and I went up to Cleveland, and Eva joined us for a exhibit at the Cleveland Museum of Art of, I think, Van Gogh pictures. We were polite but rather cool toward each other. I do admit of sending a rather sarcastic Valentine's Day card to Eva that year. So as I was saying, I sent her a card which had the following notation on it. It said, Valentine's greetings from an old flame. And when you opened the card, there was a bunch of ashes. And obviously I did not get a response to that one. Strangely enough, Eva then sent me a quote-unquote belated birthday card. My birthday is on the 14th of April, of March. I don't even know my own birthday, 14th of March. The birthday card came in early May, in which she expressed the sorrow that she had missed my birthday and wished me well, and even sent me a picture of herself, one that I have always loved. Looking back at these events of our breakup, this is the way I evaluate it. Eva obviously for a while felt liberated. I think she was young. I was really the first serious love affair that she had had. I think she felt that maybe it was too soon to break, to begin a simply one-on-one relationship. From what her parents subsequently said and what she said, subsequent to our breakup, she dated very extensively. A whole series of guys. In fact, her father at one point remarked that Their living room seems to be like the United Nations because there were guys of all forms and descriptions. But usually these were just 1 or 2 dates, and that was it. Subsequently, she admitted that she was left empty by these brief encounters, and she was emotionally unfulfilled. Eventually, and if I look back on her letters at this point, there is a clear indication that she was having serious maybe regrets about the form that our relationship had taken. For me, this was a year of drifting. Academically, I was not really very focused. I too had several dates with various women, both in South Bend and other places. Also developed a rather dangerous relationship with a woman that could have ended disastrously, but fortunately came to an end before it did. I did miss Eva, but was firmly convinced that our love affair was over and could not be resumed. Yet, I always remember the conversation that I had with my dear Benedictine sister friend, Sister Verona, who said, quote, Eva someday will come to her senses and she will realize what a valuable and wonderful man that you are, and I hope that will happen before it's too late. An interesting footnote to all of this is that we both kept our love letters that we had sent to each other. Even though the renewal of our relationship seemed very improbable, they were kept and never destroyed. Now, during the summer of 1962, I stayed at Notre Dame to work on an important project for Dr. Gabriel. Did visit home in Sharon in early June to be present for the 25th wedding anniversary of my parents. This was an absolutely wonderful affair. All of us children, and by the way, by this time, my sister and brother were both university students, and we went out and had a lovely celebration. Dad, unfortunately, by this time was showing serious deterioration in his health, and we knew that his days on this earth were rather numbered. Let me also add as a note that my brother and sister and I have had a wonderful relationship through our teen years and into our young adult life, and subsequently you could not imagine better siblings than they are. The example of my mother and father's happy marriage gave hope to me that someday I too might find the kind of a relationship, loving and lasting relationship that they had. I did not realize at that time that my life was about to take a very interesting turn, which dramatically changed the direction of my life, and this would occur by the end of that summer. The road to reconciliation with Eva starts with a number of letters that she wrote in June and July, in which she complained bitterly that she had been fired from her job, which had been the source of her income for her college education. Strangely enough, her parents did not support her financially because they had always wanted her to become a teacher, and since she insisted on going into nursing, they said, well, then you'll have to earn your own way. In the second of these letters, written sometime in July, she not only complains that she is desperate for a job, but in order to save her financial condition, or to extricate herself from the possibility of going deep into debt to finish her last year in college, she had taken the first steps to join the United States Navy, and if she then, upon graduation, would become a Navy nurse with the rank of lieutenant officer, they would not only pay for the last year of her tuition at St. John College, but they also would give her a stipend of $100 a month, which in those days, if you multiplied by a factor of 8 or 10, would be pocket money of $800 to $1,000, something that she obviously would have looked upon with considerable favor. In my response to her letters, I expressed sympathy over the loss of her job, sympathy over the fact that she was having feelings of desperation concerning her finances. And almost sort of a second thought, I wrote to her that my brother and sister are heading up to Notre Dame to pick me up on the 17th of August to take me home to Sharon, and that I would be home for 2 weeks. And that if she wanted to swim in Lake Michigan and have a little diversion from her rather busy life, why doesn't she get in touch with my brother and sister, and she should come with them and spend the weekend together. And I clearly indicated that don't feel that this will cause me emotional turmoil or anything. I said, you know me better than that. I'm way over that, and it will never cause me any problem ever. I never expected the response that I got. Within less than a week, a letter came saying, thank you for your kind invitation to come with your brother and sister to South Bend. I will be delighted to come with them, but if coming with them would not work out, I would even be coming by bus. Now that, I must say, surprised me to no end, because it is something like a 6.5 or 7 hour bus ride, and it just didn't make that much sense to me. Anyway, she did get in touch with my brother and sister, who then brought her, and we went, and they arrived, and we went out to have a pleasant evening at a little restaurant. The next day we went out to the beach on Lake Michigan, beautiful dunes. I remember horsing around, and we were playing catch with, there were a number of my South Bend friends along here, and I tackled Ava, and she fell to the ground, and I fell sort of almost over her, and when I looked into her face, there was this very loving look, but I jumped up and restrained myself, and we went on. And in the evening, we had a Wiener roast, and it was a nice, beautiful moonlit night, I remember, and when it was time for her and my sister to go to the room where they slept, I said goodbye to them. No kiss, no nothing. Ava subsequently told my sister that she was very upset that I didn't even give her a kiss. And but I was cool. I was not at all sure what this is all about. Now, next day, Sunday, we went to church and then got in the car to go back to drop Eva in Cleveland and us back to Sharon. And my brother was driving, and my sister sat with him on the front 2 seats, and Eva and I were in the back seat of the car. She on one side and I on the other. But then as time went on, it's a long ride. First we started holding hands, and then we sat very close. Then she put her head on the shoulder. And by the time we reached the Indiana-Ohio line, there was major kissing going on. And remember, kissing brings about good chemistry. There were 2 previous occasions where this had been a good indication. So there was obviously a good indication here, but I must say I was somewhat confused by the whole matter. We dropped Eva off and went on to Cleveland, and about 3 days later, there was a nice little note from her in which she thanked us for the wonderful weekend that we had spent together and expressed the desire to be able to see each other again. At this point, again, uncertain as to where this is headed. I wrote her a nice, polite letter saying how happy I was to see her, how pleasant the ride was back to Cleveland, and indicating that I would be more than happy to see her, but I would like a straight answer. Is this simply a matter of being polite, or does she really and truly want to see me? Mailed the letter. Several days later, I was taking an afternoon nap, which in my case is very unusual because I usually don't nap, but I went to a party the night before and I was recuperating. And apparently the telephone rang, and my dad answered the phone, and he yelled up to my room, "There is a phone call for you." I came down, picked up the phone, and there was Eva. And she said, "Oh, I am calling you because I would like to see you, and I would like to give back something to you." And my first reaction was, did I forget something that by chance she had picked up and she wanted to give back to me? And since I was still sort of sleepy, I said, "What are you talking about?" Whereupon she said, "Well, remember the red rose that you had given me almost exactly a year ago? And I said to you that if I wanted to restart our affair, I would send it back to you or give it back to you." So I said, "I will definitely come up and see you," which I did. In a matter of a few days, I was up in Cleveland, and fortunately, her mom and dad were not home. She made a lovely dinner, and subsequently we sat down and she gave back the rose, and she said, "I have made up my mind. I would like to be your girl again." Obviously, I was very thrilled, and a few days later, she and her brother Tony came to Sharon. The 2 of us went off to see a production of The Merry Widow at a local theater. We celebrated her birthday. All of these were wonderful steps in reconnecting. On my way back to Notre Dame in the first week of September, I stopped in Cleveland, spent a few hours with her again, and then was back in South Bend. The major question to be answered at this point was, what is going to happen with the matter of the Navy? They had already done a home visit to the Oslany residence, interviewed her parents, apparently had contacted school officials, friends, and so forth. This was progressing in a serious matter. All that was really necessary was for her to give, once she had security clearance, was for her to affix her signature, and she would have become a candidate for the Navy. I, on the other hand, said that I am ready to get married as soon as possible. I cannot see me waiting after she graduates for at least 2 years to get married. And if she is really and truly serious in this whole matter, then the Navy has to go. Subsequently, she then told her contact officer that she's withdrawing, told her parents that she's withdrawing. Her mother, who never liked this idea to begin with, was ecstatic with joy. Her father, who thought that this way, even if Eva didn't have a job, he would have to come up with money, was not at all pleased, but eventually did come around and accepted the fact that Eva was not going to go to the Navy. Fortunately, just at that time, an opening at a drugstore in downtown Cleveland came about, where she was just 2 or 3 blocks from St. John College. After her classes at the college, she could walk over, work for a few hours, and the bus stop was right there, and she could ride home. So this apparently was a very good solution. Few words about our academic standing at this point. In the fall of 1962, Eva was a senior at St. John's College, ready to graduate in June of '63. In one of her subsequent letters, she mentions that after our reconciliation, all of a sudden she has a new enthusiasm for life. She is now ready and willing to make sacrifices for long-range plans, and that we are meant for each other, and we will do everything possible to make this relationship work. As far as my condition at Notre Dame is concerned, in 1962-63, I had a Ford Foundation pre-doctoral fellowship, and I had by that time completed all of the coursework necessary for my second MA as well as the PhD degree. That fall, I was working on writing my second master's thesis, and planned to make a defense of that thesis, an oral examination for the second master's in medieval studies. I did, in fact, finish my thesis in early December, handed it in. Dr. Gabriel thought it was an excellent piece of work. Unfortunately, I was unable to have the oral examination because you needed the dissertation director, Dr. Gabriel, and 3 other professors to do the oral exam, and being close to Christmas with these faculty members traveling all over the world giving speeches and lectures and whatever, it was difficult to get committee together, so I had to wait until January to do that, but everything was exactly like we hoped. At the course of the early fall, Dr. Gabriel asked me again to come into his inner sanctum, his personal office, sat me down and said something to the effect, my dear boy, we have taught you about everything that you can learn from us here at the Institute. It is time for you to go and study abroad. And so he said, Fulbright applications will be ready in about a month. I want you to apply for a Fulbright, and I want you to apply to Vienna, because there you will find material for your doctoral dissertation. Besides, you speak good German, you will have no problem spending a year doing research and auditing classes at the university. So, true to what he had indicated would be the path to follow, I did apply. Early November, there was a faculty committee that examined all of the applications from the whole university for Fulbrights. A faculty committee of 5 professors. Fortunately, I knew 2 of them. Apparently, I did very well during the course of the interview. The secretary to the dean of the graduate school, who was a dear friend, told me that they were very enthusiastic and that they are going to recommend me with every indication that I am their top candidate. So that's exactly what happened. I was then recommended to the Fulbright committee, which met in Washington or in New York, to make sure that my application would be seriously considered. Professor Gabriel took a trip in early following year, 63, to New York and Washington, took out the appropriate people to lunch, and when he came back by train, as he usually traveled in those days between New York and South Bend, as he stepped off the train, he said, "My boy, you are going to go to Vienna." But obviously, until I received formal word of this, I was not at all sure that this would be true, and you never know, something might not work. In the meanwhile, the relationship between Eva and me became more and more intense. Fortunately, we were also able to see each other far more frequently than we had in that first year of our love affair. Already early in October, I was able to hitch a ride to Cleveland. We spent a wonderful weekend together. In fact, even my parents came up from Sharon, and there was a happy reunion for all of us. Then subsequently, and I don't quite understand to this day exactly why, but Eva's brother Tony all of a sudden developed a great interest in Notre Dame football, and wanted to come up to the football game, and I did my best to find him a very pretty date. In fact, the girl he took out was Miss Mishawaka, which is a community to South Bend, so she was not a bad-looking girl. Worked at the Medieval Institute Library as an assistant, and we had a wonderful weekend together with Ava and Tony, and I introduced Ava to my Medieval Institute friends. By this time there were 6 students in the Medieval Institute, and they held a special party. In fact, they thought that we might even announce our engagement at the party. Strangely enough, Dr. Gabriel, when I was making plans for this weekend, behaved sort of weird and said he didn't know what he will be doing and how he will be. And so I took this to mean that he's not really interested in seeing Ava. Yet on the day of the football game, when I talked to him briefly on the telephone, he seemed very sad and dejected that he will not get to meet her. But I said to him, and quite plainly, look, you showed no great interest in seeing her, so I made plans, and I'm very sorry that they did not include you, but you can be sure that if Ava is able to come up another time, then you will definitely get to meet her. The weekend ended in an absolutely wonderful fashion. After the football game and the little party that my institute friends had, Tony and Eva had to go back to Cleveland because Tony had to work the following day, although it was a Sunday. And here I did something sort of wild but still wonderful. I hitched a ride with them. We left around 1 o'clock in the evening from South Bend, headed toward Cleveland. And so I rode all the way past Toledo on the Ohio Turnpike, practically to Lorain, and then said goodbye to Eva, and then they dropped me off at one of these turnpike plazas. I crossed from the one plaza to the other in the middle of the night, and was in the process of making little signs saying Notre Dame student needs ride west, when a young man leaned over my shoulder and said, "I'll take you." And he and his friend, another guy, 2 University of Buffalo students on their way to California, asked me if I wanted to drive their car because they've been on the road for hours and they were tired. They had a 1962 Oldsmobile convertible. This is in '63, so it was a brand new car and drove like magic. And so while they slept, I drove west, and then I was even able to convince them when we got close to South Bend that since they turned out to be Catholic boys, it would be nice if they went to Mass at Notre Dame. So they took me to campus and dropped me off within 2 blocks of my home. So that weekend worked out beautiful. There was the next event is a rather scary one. End of October 1962 was the time of the so-called Cuban Missile Crisis. This is when the Soviets deployed missiles in Cuba, and the United States felt that this was unacceptable and forced them to remove them. But this is about as close during the course of the Cold War that the 2 superpowers came to war. In fact, President Kennedy addressed the nation and said, you know, things look very, very touchy, and we are hoping that the Russians will back down. Eva wrote a very desperate letter saying that, oh, if this is going to happen, they will take you into the army, and something might happen to you, and I will be not there to take care of you. And she was very desperate. I reassured her that somehow this crisis will go away, but even if something terrible happened, I would try some way or another to get to Cleveland so that we would be together if the end of the world came at that point. Fortunately, that did not happen. Tony once more made a date with the same Miss Mishawaka at the beginning of December, and Eva came once more. This time, we didn't even go to the football game. We went out and had a wonderful dinner with Professor Gabriel, who examined Eva as you would examine a fine piece of art. Getting out of the car at the restaurant, he even sort of twirled her around to see how she looked under the light, because when he picked us up in the street where I lived, the lighting was very poor. And then when we went into the restaurant, he was the one who removed her coat, and during the course of the evening, he directed the conversation to her. There was one funny little episode. They came to the conclusion, Eva and Gabriel, that Eva's dad and Professor Gabriel were at the University of Budapest at the same time, maybe 1 or 2 year difference. So Gabriel said, well, then let's write a little note to your father. And so he reaches into his pocket and fumbles around. He says, I do need a pen. Whereupon Eva immediately took out her purse, handed a pen to Gabriel. He took it, he said, I have a pen. I just wanted to see if you had a pen, because every educated woman should have a pen in her purse. I mean, it sounds crazy, but the old man was obviously trying to find out whether this girl, who became the center of interest of his favorite graduate assistant, was really and truly the kind of a woman that he should marry. This was test time. Okay? Obviously, Eva passed the test with flying colors, and Gabriel was very, very impressed with her charm, her wit, her readiness to answer, and from that point on, he was convinced that this relationship had a future. In fact, several times he made references that he wants to be the one who would marry us, and what he would say at the marriage mass, what kind of examples based on medieval material that he would preach on. There was one fly in the ointment, however. When Eva and Tony returned back to Cleveland late at night or early in the morning, this time I did not accompany her. Next morning, when Eva woke up, the reception from her parents was extremely cold and very severe. They indicated to her that this was the very last time that she was allowed to come and visit me, because although Tony was there to make sure that nothing terrible happened, although Professor Gabriel, who was a priest, was there to supervise us, the Oslany parents felt that Eva's trips to South Bend opened the door for ugly gossip and the Cleveland Hungarian community unfortunately was famous for that. And in fact, we were convinced, that is Eva and I, that somebody must have made some comment in a conversation with the Oszlányi parents, and so they said, anytime I wanted to come, it was perfectly fine, but as far as Eva coming to visit me, only if there is a very major event and far better supervised than up to this point. So no more football weekends, nothing like that. So that came to a screeching halt. I was home for Christmas. It was really the last Christmas that we spent as a family, because the following Christmas Dad was already gone. Eva and I were not together on Christmas because both my family and her family said, you know, we would like to have the family gather as a unit. And however, on New Year's we went together to a ball with my sister and her then boyfriend, a gentleman called Victor Fisher, who will subsequently become her husband. In early January, after I returned to South Bend, my dear friend, the Benedictine nun, Sister Verona, was on campus. She had been away, gone back to her college in South Dakota and had already begun teaching. She came back to meet with her professors submitting her dissertation. And Verona and I had dinner together, and I was indicating to her that Eva and I had reconciled, as she had indicated that we would, because she said that she would pray until that would happen, and obviously it did. I also indicated to her that there is the major possibility of us, after graduation, having to separate for a lengthy period of time, because if I would get the Fulbright, and since both of us were incredibly poor, I would probably have to go to Europe alone, and Eva would have to start working, and then the following June, June of '64, upon completion of the year abroad, I would come home and we would have our wedding then. The idea of being separated for that length of time was just terribly painful. And then she made a comment which at that point I didn't quite understand. She said something to the effect, well, I prayed for you to get together. I will, however, I am good not only at praying, but maybe I can help you in other ways as well. And sure enough, things began going my way, or our way. I was home for, on the 14th of March, I received the official notification from the Fulbright Commission that I had received the grant to study for 10 months in Vienna, and that I would be leaving on the 2nd of September, and my grant would run out on the 1st of July. When Eva called me to wish me happy birthday, because that was my birthday, I was very conflicted, and I was obviously happy that I got the Fulbright. It is, after all, except for the Rhodes Scholarship, the most prestigious study abroad grant that you can get. Yet, here was the prospect of having to leave her for this length of time. So it was a rather bittersweet matter. The next time that I was home was at Easter time. Again, Eva came and spent time with me in Sharon. We discussed the matter of what we will have to do, and feeling that both of our parents, as well as reasonable approach to our future, dictated that I would have to go alone. There was no way that we could gather enough money from the first week of June, when both of us would graduate, to the 2nd of September, when I was about to leave. It just financially was impossible. Let me add that while I was home for Christmas in Sharon, I went to visit my alma mater, Youngstown University, spoke to Professor David Behan, who was the head of the history department, and got a promise from him that he would employ me as in my first teaching job during the summer, teaching both first and second semester summer session, 6 and 6 hours of instruction and Western civilization courses, for which I was to receive roughly $1,000. Not much money, but in those days that was not too bad. But even that was not enough to get us to some kind of responsible beginning to our married life. We told both my parents of our decision to delay, and although they felt that they would have preferred if we could have gone together, they felt that it was the responsible thing. I then formally asked the parents of Ava for permission to marry their daughter. And the response was interesting. They said they liked me very much. They know that Ava and I are very much in love with each other, and they have nothing against my person. But until I have a more sound financial basis, they really don't think that we should get married. This obviously put me in a very blue mood, and I remember sitting in the Oslani living room late at night, and Eva came and comforted me and said, you know, something somehow will work out. I went back to South Bend, to Notre Dame. Fortunately, Sister Verona came to take her oral exams for the PhD. We again had dinner, at which point then she came with a proposal which goes something like this. Her mother had just recently become widowed. The Kessler family, Sister Verona's family, was a rather wealthy family in Aberdeen, South Dakota. They owned the largest grocery chain in town. And each year, the Kessler family gave a donation of $1,000 to the convent where Sister was located. And Sister Verona promised that she will talk to her mother and see if somehow she could give the $1,000 to us, to Eva and to me, and so that we could have something to start our life with, and with no interest or anything, simply a signature with the promise that once I have a job, we would repay it in $100 installments until the $1,000 are paid back. In the meanwhile, Eva is getting letters from various hospitals and nursing schools, whether she wants to teach or become a nurse on one of the floors. And she is wondering, you know, how can we arrange this? What should she accept? We had hoped that somehow we can come up with a solution that would allow us to get married sooner, and the solution we had was the so-called Christmas compromise. If in fact Sister Verona came through with this money, we argued, then I would go to Europe alone in September, would come home for Christmas. On the 4th of January, we would have our wedding. We would have earned money during the summer, me teaching at Youngstown, Eva going to work, and until December and working. And then we would go to Europe together and be able to travel, and then coming home, hopefully with a job lined up, there would be the $1,000 with which we could then begin life, buy furniture and appliances and all the things that are necessary. Now, again, let me stress that $1,000 today doesn't seem like a hell of a lot of money, but in 1963, that was worth about $10,000 in modern day buying power. So it was not unrealistic. So again, telephone calls and correspondence between Eva and myself. We are planning this, and she says, I will have to know very soon which job I should apply for, because it makes a big difference what job I accept. And then I will have to tell them that it's only for 6 months. Sister Rona then wrote to me saying that I will get back to you by Friday the 26th of April, which was interestingly the date when it was Ava's senior prom at the college, and to which she had invited me. And so that week the answer did come through. I did get the promise of the $1,000. I did not at that point yet tell Ava. I went quickly to Chicago and bought a engagement ring, and on Friday the 26th of April, I arrived by bus. In the meanwhile, my brother had brought up the family car, so we would have something to go to the prom with, and my tuxedo, and I came armed with the diamond, and we then got properly dressed and were headed to the prom, but I took a slight detour. I already had found a lovely sort of terraced area overlooking the Rocky River in Lakewood, Rocky River Gorge, and there I presented Eva with the ring. Naturally, she was very pleased. And then we went off to the prom, which was held at the Sheraton near the airport. And we arrived, and naturally, Eva immediately very nicely showed off the fact that she was, and that there were everybody congratulating us and all that. We had a lovely evening. We stopped before going home and had a bottle of champagne, which put us even in a better mood. And so the engagement was a great success. The next morning, Eva showed her ring. Her mother was very pleased. Her father was not. He said, well, engagements are not a private affair, but a family affair. And I thought that's going to be later. Anyway, he eventually got on. It's strange enough that that very same weekend, and this is, again, one of those things that things come together, there was a combined concert of the St. John College Glee Club, of which Eva was the president, and the Notre Dame University Glee Club, which came to Notre Dame by bus, from Notre Dame to Cleveland by bus, and they had a joint concert Saturday night, where again Eva sang not only in the combined and separate choruses or glee clubs, but she also had a trio number, and as she stood on the stage, she flashed her ring, and since many of the faculty members were there prior and after the concert, I was introduced to everybody, and it was a very lovely, lovely affair. Eva was also able to talk the Notre Dame Glee Club members into taking me home by bus so that I wouldn't have to take the Greyhound. And so next day I traveled home with them. The president of the Notre Dame Glee Club then got on the public address system as we pulled out from downtown Cleveland, introduced me, told the kids that I'm marrying the president of the St. John's Glee Club, and that we're going to get married and go to Europe and all that kind of good stuff. Anyway, that worked out just wonderful. In early May, Eva came up to South Bend once more, this time with my mother, father, brother, and sister. So she was certainly chaperoned well, and the Oslani parents could not have any kind of opposition to that one. The reason for the visit of the whole family was simply to thank Gabriel for all of the kindness that he had shown me through the years, for being so good and arranging for my fellowships and scholarships, and getting me the Fulbright. And I must say he was always a very, very hard man to work for, a fair man to work for, and he, especially later on, always, I had the impression that in many ways I was the son that he could not have because he was a priest. And I remember about a month before I graduated, he said, you know, our relationship of 3.5 years is now coming to an end. I know I will never have an assistant as nice as you were. And, you know, I learned not only things scholarly, but a great deal about the world, because he was a man well versed in how to get along and how to present yourself. For example, he said, one of the most important things you must remember is to be in with the secretary of the dean and of the president and so forth. Send them a postcard from abroad. Maybe bring a bottle of perfume when you see them, because this will open doors for you forever and ever. And I learned that, and it came in very, very handy. The last point in this episode, and we will call it a day, was graduation day for both of us. Eva graduated on the 9th of June at the cathedral in Cleveland, and I had come down to be at the graduation. By the way, came down on the car that Dr. Gabriel gave me as sort of a final payment for work I had done for him, and he said, look, I can give you money, which you'll probably spend very quickly. However, here's the car that I will probably no longer drive much. Why don't you take that in lieu of the payment? And so for the first time I had a car, and the first trip that I took with this car was to Ava's graduation. Graduation was in the morning. There was a little reception that the Oslany family held at their home in the early afternoon. We then went and picked up my sister, who was visiting friends in Cleveland, because I had to have a chaperone. And we were on our way to Notre Dame. And Sunday, it was my graduation, and Ava was there for that. That same afternoon, we headed back. I dropped her off. Next morning, the 11th of June, at 7 o'clock, Ava was at Lakewood Hospital starting her work. At noon, that same Monday, I started teaching at Youngstown University. Our school days were over, work life began. And that's where we will close now.